Hello, I'm Bob Harris. Welcome to the Duraman's educational video series. In this video, we will show and demonstrate the latest one and only Terrazzi Sprayable polished concrete system. Let's talk about some of the features and the benefits of using the Duraman Terrazzi Sprayer. Certainly you can cover large areas in a short period of time, whereas traditionally the older generation of concrete artisans would get on their hands and knees and trowel it down, or perhaps even use a squeegee. So in past applications of micro toppings, we would use a traditional magic trowel or a hand trowel, or on large areas even a rubber squeegee. But even as good as a craftsperson was, it's next to impossible to not create trowel ridges when you're doing it with that method. With the Terrazzi Sprayer, you don't have that issue. It's putting down one seamless cement-based floor. So also, as a result of spraying, you can cover large areas, which is also a reduction in labor. So on a 20,000 square foot floor, the old traditional method of hand troweling or squeegeeing, that's going to require a lot of artisans to not create a cold joint, whereas on a floor that big or even much larger, one person can be spraying while the second person is broadcasting, which we'll demonstrate in a later video. The cool thing about this product is you can achieve the look of a traditional polished concrete. Polished concrete has sometimes a salt and pepper aggregate, and you get that appearance with using this system. So oftentimes if you have a concrete substrate that's not a suitable candidate to put a cement-based topping over it, perhaps it has extensive cracking, chips, spalls, and divots, you are forced to go with a much thicker base, like a self-leveling cement, for example. But one of the challenges when you're installing a cement-based topping, a self-leveling, is to not create a seamless appearance. You end up with either spike roller marks, or you end up with smoother lines. And one way you can eliminate those is to go back over the self-leveling with the Arapido system being sprayed with the Terrazzi Sprayer. So from that perspective, it's a very unique system. Gypsum underlayments. Maybe you have a client in which they want a different look, they want an upgrade. Their vinyl tile, they remove the vinyl tile only to find that there's a gypsum-based self-leveling that has previously been installed. Certainly it's acceptable to use the Arapido system over that, but you want to do some basic testing. Traditionally, you would want the gypsum to be a minimum of about 3,500 psi. And you might ask, well, how the heck do we know? If it was installed 10 years ago, how do we know if it was 3,500 psi? Oftentimes on polished concrete jobs, I use what's called a Mohs pencil scratch test. And you could certainly do that. If the surface was scratching at a 6 or higher, you're more than acceptable to go over it with the Arapido system. Lightly take a hammer and just ping the surface, and if it makes an indentation of the gypsum, or even a high heel, something like that where there's point load, if it makes a dent in it, you probably would not want to choose to go over something like that on a gypsum base. But if it was sustainable and strong enough, certainly you could go right over that surface. High-rise floors is another great example. You have a client that's wanting the look and the feel of a traditional polished concrete. Now you have the ability to bring this equipment up and create the look and feel of polished concrete. And in a later video, we're going to demonstrate the products that are being used, and certainly we're going to demonstrate on how you apply the product. Let's discuss what the system consists of, starting with the Duraman Terrazzi Sprayer. This is what's referred to as a diaphragm pump. It is 110 volt, 15 amp, so it doesn't require any specific power other than the 110 volt. Certainly you have the hose that connects from the sprayer to the spray nozzle, which we'll demonstrate in a later video. A key component of the system is CP1000. CP1000 serves two functions. It's the activator that mixes into the Arapido dry powder at approximately 4.6 liters of CP1000. But equally important is the CP1000 goes down as a primer coat on the substrate, which we'll demonstrate in a later video. You have the Arapido, and in some instances you might choose to tint it. And you can use aquacolor, comes in a variety of different colors, that is mixed into the CP1000, and then you mix the components together and you get your integrally colored Arapido system that's sprayed down. Another key component is this screen, and what we want to do is once we mix our CP1000 with our Rapido, we put this over the top of a clean 5-gallon bucket and we dump the previously mixed wet material into the screen here. The last thing that we want is during our spray application is any small particulate that could possibly clog the tip. So we screen it to make sure that it's in fact clean material that's running through our Terrazzi sprayer. So also as part of the system, you have another key component which is called the cast-on. And so the cast-on is what we're actually broadcasting into the previously sprayed Rapido system. Now, if you choose to, if you wanted to get some additional accenting, you could use a color-fast dry pigment powder basically that mixes into the cast-on. And so you can get some tonal differences and create some really attractive looking floors combining these components. So we'll show you in a later video the mixing of the product. It mixes with a traditional drill. And then once the material has fully cured, typically the next day, we come back with a traditional swing buffer and we have a white pad. But one of the keys to that is we use a 100 grit honeycombed traditional diamond pad. And what I've found to work really successfully is to use a spray adhesive. What we'll do is we'll spray the pad and then we'll spray the backs of these, and it just helps stick onto the pad so that when you turn the buffing machine on, the pads don't sling off of the white pad, so which we'll be demonstrating. Once you've done that, you want to certainly vacuum any dust or particulate. Not a bad idea to run a damp mop over the surface just to get any residual dust off of the floor. And then once the surface has had adequate dry time, the next and final steps would include putting your top coats or your clear coat sealers over the top. So for the next videos, we're going to be demonstrating the Purdue U90, which is a high solids polyurethane coating. And if you're concerned about maybe odor or budget and you want to go with a little bit lower solid system, you can consider the Purdue A03, which is a water-based acrylic system, which is really nice, but you don't have the odor. So stay tuned for the next series of videos. You've made your investment on your brand new Duraman Terrazzi sprayer. This is how it's going to come to you packaged in a crate. So you'll either have to pry off the lid or in some cases take a screw gun and take the screws out of the lid. You simply take the lid off. It'll have packing paper. Take the components out of there. All right, we've just taken our new Duraman Terrazzi spray system out of the crate. Let's review the key components that are included in the crate along with our 110 volt 15 amp diaphragm sprayer. Included in the crate is a 3/8 of an inch hose, which we'll demonstrate in a later video, which connects to the sprayer. Now you'll notice here we have some thread protectors. All you simply want to do is it's threaded, so of course these are only just to protect the threads, so you just want to take those off. So this will attach to the Terrazzi sprayer. Then what we will do is we're going to reduce from the 3/8 of an inch down to a 1/4 inch, which will attach to the spray gun. Also, we have our hopper, which we'll demonstrate shortly how it attaches to the Terrazzi sprayer. We have our spray gun, which will connect to our 1/4 inch line. And in the box, we have our tip and sprayer, basically. Spray tip in this size is a 531. The 5 represents the spray pattern width. It's a 5-inch. And its .31 is the orifice size, which is right here. And we'll demonstrate when we're applying the product, if the tip becomes clogged, you switch this to a much wider orifice and give it a spray and it clears it. It's really simple and fast. That's the recommended tip size to use with our Terrazzi sprayer, is the 531. Included in the parts, there's a spare diaphragm that you always want to keep on hand, and this would require changing the diaphragm in the pump unit over there. So that's just a spare diaphragm. There is an additional tip and nozzle. So this tip size happens to be 431. So why would you want to switch to a 431? Perhaps you're in a tight, confined area where you can't have this big, wide spray pattern. Maybe it's a small aisleway, a hallway, a bathroom. So this is going to spray at a much less size in terms of the 531, so that you want to consider using that. We have the reducers. So this is the reducer. It's going to reduce us from the 3/8 of an inch line down to the 1/4 inch line is what the reducer is. All of the wrenches to tighten it to the machine, and then tighten from the 1/4 inch to the 3/8 of an inch. And then we have the seal, which will actually sit on the pump right here. You want to install that seal, and then what we'll do is we'll take the hopper gun and we'll use this clamp. We'll go around the hopper gun and the machine, and we'll tighten it so we have a nice, clean, tight seal. And then from there, we'll demonstrate how to hook all these things up and ultimately show you how to spray using this Terrazzi sprayer. This is how we connect the hopper to the sprayer. Really important is to always put this gasket, which is a barrier between the sprayer and the hopper. Make sure it's seated properly. Take your hopper. It'll fit right in there. Then you take your connection clamp, which is threaded. So all I'm going to do is thread this clamp until I get a tight, snug connection. And from there, we'll take this hose, insert it into the hopper. Keep in mind, when we are spraying the Arapido, this hose has nothing to do with that. This is simply to recycle water during the cleaning process. So after we're done with our spraying of our system, we would fill the hopper with the water, and this just recycles the water. It's now time to connect the hoses to the sprayer. So we're going to start with connecting our 3/8 inch diameter hose. Remember, as we talked previously in a video, these are thread protectors, so you simply remove that. Now, just to let you know, this is a 40-foot long hose. A good tip to consider is if you're doing samples only, contact Durman, and they offer smaller hose lengths. The diameter is the same, but they offer this hose in a 10-foot length. Why would that be important? Think about it. That's 40 feet of material that's going through that hose. And so that's a lot of material that's going to be wasted when it comes time to clean it. So by using a shorter length hose, 10 feet for example, you're saving a lot in material. Typically, you would only be using 5 pounds of Arapido to make sample boards. So we're taking our 3/8 of an inch hose, connecting it to the sprayer. You want to make certain that all of the connections are in fact tight. So go ahead and crank them down pretty good and tight. One way you can check the connections is put a third volume of water in the hopper once everything is connected. And actually you're priming everything with water. And I want to go ahead and spray the water. And I'm going to check to make sure that all the connections are tight. The next connection is to take the reducer. So we're reducing from a 3/8 diameter hose down to a 1/4 inch diameter. So we're going to go ahead, put that in there. Tighten it down. Now we take our thread protector out of the 1/4 inch diameter hose, and we're going to connect this. Now this hose is 8 feet in length. We would then tighten that snug. And the second to the last connection that we have is the 1/4 inch hose now connects to the spray gun. Snug. Our last connection is the nozzle, and the tip which connects to the spray gun. Now this is simply hand tight. You don't need to use a tool to over tighten this. You want to make sure that the nozzle is positioned in the correct position before you cinch it all the way down tight, like so. All of our connections have been made. We connected our 3/8 inch diameter hose to the sprayer. We then used the reducer. From the reducer, we connected the 1/4 inch diameter hose, and from there we attached the spray gun to the 1/4 inch diameter hose, and then of course the nozzle. Now it's time to turn the machine on. Some important considerations to take into account is always have the water valve and the pressure valve here in the off position. What happens is if the pressure valve was full on or even half on, and then we switch the machine on, it draws too many amps and it's very prone to breaking the circuit breaker, tripping the circuit breaker. So it is important, make sure these two valves are off prior to turning the machine on. A couple of other considerations on your Terrazzi sprayer is oftentimes Durman will get a phone call when the contractor turns the machine to the on position and immediately tries to spray and he's not getting any pressure. Give it a few minutes, 3 to 4 minutes to allow it to build pressure and then give it a try. So take that consideration into account. Also, maintenance of the sprayers is crucial. Keep in mind, we're spraying cement through all of these components. So we want to make sure that we keep the machine clean, and inside of here is a spring-loaded ball. I don't know if I'll be able to twist it over for you to see, but right here is a spring-loaded ball, and it's a good idea, whether it's a used machine or a brand new machine, just go down there, it's spring-loaded. Right there, I could feel it depressing. You want to make sure that that's functioning. If that's not functioning, you will not get the unit to spray. So another good tip I've heard of contractors doing is once they've cleaned the machine, is just to take 1 to 2 drips of dish soap at the end of the cleaning process, and just drip in 1 to 2 little drips as a lubricant. And the next time you use the machine, you're going to flush it with water anyways to make sure it's spraying properly, and it'll flush that right out, and that's going to help preserve that little spring-loaded ball. In preparation for the Terrazzi system, we're getting ready to apply CP1000 as a prime coat. Before we do that, let's talk about the proper surface preparation. Keep in mind, this product is going down so super ultra thin that the substrate that it's going over has to be in good quality shape. You can't expect to use the Arapido Terrazzi system to fill divots, voids. That would have to be previously filled. So if you have a concrete substrate that's of good sound quality and it's fairly flat, you can typically sand that with a 60 grit sanding screen, and then vacuum that and damp mop the residual dust, and then CP1000 primer that. If you're going over a self-leveling overlay cement, you would want to, at a minimum, somewhere between a 80 grit to a 100 grit sanding screen. Same thing, vacuum and damp mop just any residual particulate. And the same thing we had talked about going over gypsum. So make sure that you've properly prepared the substrate prior to this step, which we're about to demonstrate, which is the CP1000. Now, in past applications and past videos, we've talked about applying the CP1000 in 2 applications. For best results, what you would prefer to do is apply the CP1000 on day 1, and then while that system is drying, do all of your necessary prep, get your mixing station set up, get everything ready to go, and let that dry overnight. And the following day, just prior to your Terrazzi application, you would apply a second coat, and once that was tack-free and dry to the touch, then you would start the application. We have had applicators successfully apply the same day. You would want that first application of CP1000 to dry probably a minimum of 4 hours to be sure that there's no outgassing, to make sure it's all dry. And then come back with your second light coat, and once that's tack-free, you can go back over that with the Terrazzi system. So it can be done in one day. Just don't try to cut corners. Let that first coat dry for a full 4 hours, or when in doubt, apply the application the previous day to the Terrazzi application. That's the most time-tested method. So in terms of applying the CP1000 as our prime coat, probably the fastest way to do it is to have the product in a pump-up sprayer, and while one person is spraying it down, you have a second person back rolling. Now in previous videos we've talked about it's acceptable to use a mop and mop the CP1000 down. The only problem with that is sometimes you get a little bit of lint that pulls off of the mop, and if that dries into the floor, we're spraying the Terrazzi system down so ultra thin, there's a good chance you would see those fibers. So for that reason, spraying and back rolling. For today's purposes or demonstration, we're simply going to just dump some of the CP1000 onto the surface of our previously prepped substrate, and we're going to roll it down. And then this is the first application, and we would let that dry the minimum of 4 hours or until the next day. Once it's 100% dry, we'll put our second application. Once that's dry, we come back and we spray down the Rapido system, the Terrazzi system, and we'll demonstrate that shortly. As we finish up our first application of CP1000 primer coat, you'll notice that I have protective boots over my work boots. The last thing you want to do, keep in mind this is such a very thin system, is we don't want to contaminate the substrate, nor do we want to have any boot prints or in the form of dirt come back through our Terrazzi system. So it is important to keep the substrate clean, and certainly in between coats. So our next coat of CP1000, a minimum of 4 hours after this is dry, put your protective booties on your boots. Okay, we're back roughly 4 hours after the first application of CP1000. I'm checking our first coat is tack-free. I don't feel any stickiness or tackiness to the surface. We've just completed or are about to complete our second application of CP1000, and once this is dry to the touch and it's no longer sticky, we go right on to the next step, which is the spray application of our Terrazzi. An integral part of the Terrazzi system is cast-on. Cast-on is packaged in 25-pound increments, and the color is neutral. So you could certainly use the cast-on product into the Rapido just like this, or you can color it or tint it. So for demonstration purposes, we're going to take roughly half of this product and show you how to use it as the neutral color, or as an alternative, you can use the Color Fast coloring system. This product is offered in 30 different colors. I would say the popular colors are all in the gray tones. Usually, per 25-pound pail, we'll use anywhere from 3/4 of a cup to 1 cup of the Color Fast pigment. So we have roughly half of the cast on there, so we're just going to use a half of cup of Color Fast pewter. We're going to dump it right into here. Now the best way to mix it is with a power drill, dry. Go ahead and spin it with a drill. In this case, we'll put the lid back on. Make sure it's secure. And this is also an effective way of mixing. As I mentioned earlier, for best results, take a dry drill paddle, mix it with that for demonstration purposes. I'm just going to take my gloves, give it another thorough mix. And as you can see, there's just a very subtle difference between the natural and the side over here tinted with the pewter Color Fast.